Hey guys, welcome back to the Fifth Star. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Albert.
And normally at this time we review a movie, and we said we were going to review A Complete Unknown, but my bad, didn't have time to watch it. So instead, we are going to do kind of a reaction / theory video about Severance, just season 1.
Yep.
Because Albert just finished watching season 1 like a week or two ago.
Yeah.
So it's fresh. We are not going to address the recent series.
Yeah, I have not seen season 2, so
even though the hype is there, and we plan on doing another video for season 2.
Yep.
So, what are your thoughts?
So obviously Severance has been super hyped up. So I'm again really late onto the bandwagon. I will say that it's very fun just watching and trying to figure out what's going on. So I totally get the appeal. By mid-season of season 1, every episode I was just like, okay, now I have this theory and that theory. And it was a little frustrating because I wanted them to reveal more. But yeah, I do have some kind of really decent working theories, I think, that piece together some of the pieces that they've given us. I'm going to have to spoil everything in season 1.
We're going to be spoiling everything.
Yeah. But I think my main kind of theory that I'm working with is that they're all MDR, the 4 people on the team, they're all part of Kier's brain somehow. So, Kier's the main founder, right, of Lumon. They're doing macro data processing in this department. And to me, what they're doing on the computer is some kind of perhaps like machine learning, some kind of like trying to compute what emotion, like how these numbers make you feel.
Okay.
Is like a translation for machines to be able to understand human emotion in some kind of analytical data terms. And
so Kier is actually like a computer?
Perhaps, yeah. Because when you look at the different departments, at least the 2 that we know of so far, macro data processing, that's something that happens somewhere in your brain. And then you have the optics department that Bert's a part of, where they look at art and appreciate arts and stuff like that. So those departments are perhaps different parts of his brain, that they are, and Kier's dead, we know, right? Or at least that's what we're kind of told, or seems like. Yeah, and we can talk more, unpack the last episode, because it does talk more about that. But I think that in some way he's continuing to try to live on his consciousness. Maybe he's actually embodied somehow, but at least his consciousness, maybe his body's being awaiting the downloading of his consciousness. But in the meantime, they need to compute and figure out how to connect those dots somehow. And I think there's some clues, right? So when you go to the perpetuity wing, there's a quote on the wall that says, "The remember do not decay." Mm-hmm. And so now that has more to do with memory, but I think, and it is a little classic and typical of a super rich. What?
But it's very telling of like, does anything decay in this Lumon world?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if your theory, like, it does align with it.
That element of being able to live on past death.
Uh-huh.
Mark's wife is dead. And so
somehow
she's yeah. So now that's my second part of my theory of who is Miss Casey really. Is that really his wife? So we'll get to that. Other things that make me think that they might be actually part of Kier is that when Mark is talking with Miss Casey, and Miss Casey, like right before she gets, I guess, like fired or something, she asks Mark, "Why are you being so nice to me?" And he says, "It's because we're not parts of people, we're people." I think that is literally meant to be taken at face value. I think when they're inside the building in some way, they're not really fully human. Maybe they're...
they're split in half.
Yeah,
so they're 2 parts of a person.
And because the same thing happens when Helena, we find out, Outie tells Innie, "You're not a person, I'm a person." So it is talking on that level of, you're kind of somehow not fully complete because, you don't remember.
Yeah.
You don't have access to your
You're like a newborn.
Yeah. But I do think a lot of the little clues that they're giving are meant to also work literally.
Huh.
Yeah. So another big tell, I think, is
Okay.
when they're in the hallway with Bert and Irving is talking with Bert. I think one of the earlier times in the season. And then Bert starts reciting like words of Kier's. And he talks about how, you workers, you are my hands or you're my mouth. I speak through you. I live through you. Kind of like along those terms. And again, I think that's in a way almost meant to be literal, like they're part of him
That's
or part of his body. In my mind, that's like the part of it that I think works, but trying to extrapolate of, okay, could this even get crazier? I thought perhaps maybe the building itself is Kier's like consciousness.
Ooh,
or embodies him in some way.
Interesting, since there's like so many religious motifs in the show that it kind of reminds me of how people describe the church as being a body.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And everyone is like a different part
of
the
body.
Like a literal member.
Yeah. No, I think that could work. Yeah. I mean, is it coincidence that in the production design, when you walk into the lobby, you have this massive face of Kier?
Yeah.
And then underneath the levels, supposedly in the basement levels, you have the other part of the severed consciousness.
Yeah.
And then so you have this like outside and inside part of the building.
I like this.
Yeah.
I like this theory.
I don't know. There's just a lot of pieces there.
This is good.
And then making that even crazier, because I just feel like the creator of the show or whoever came up with the concept is going to start with some of these kind of typical maybe sci-fi tropes.
Yeah.
But then make it even crazier than, what we might have seen before. So I even thought perhaps is the building, the whole campus itself, like embedded in the chip that's living in Kier's brain right now. And somehow like they're all like little nanobots or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to think like how crazy could this get in terms of.
So they get shrunk down?
Perhaps. I don't know. Maybe I even thought like, what is the outside world then, right? When they kind of go into the elevator, I thought maybe that's them going outside the building and they think they're on the outside world, but they're actually still within
the virtual world.
The virtual, or Kier's kind of like manufactured something where like, because even all the apartment complexes are part of Lumon's property.
Right.
So maybe that whole little town is like this enclosed, almost like Truman Show, like enclosed environment. And they think they have autonomy, but they actually don't. So maybe that's the real version. But then the other part is perhaps that it's a virtual, kind of like a Matrix type thing.
I would not like that. If they revealed that it was all in their heads, I'd be upset.
So I was 100% on board with this is the Outie world is just virtual. So when they step into the elevator, they're actually going into like a sleeping pod, and then they just turn off and go to sleep, and then they're just imagining and dreaming.
Maybe that's what they're doing to Gemma.
Outie world.
Sorry.
Oh, I mean, okay, yes. So we need to go there too about her because she's a big part of this, right?
Right.
But
anyway,
that was my theory until the overtime contingency OTC.
Oh, that's right.
Happened.
Yeah, that wouldn't work at all with the
and
overtime
then
contingency.
That kind of threw the whole thing of like, okay, well, they're actually able to go and be where they are as the Outie and be physically
and not have
present.
to go in a sleeping pod.
Yeah, I don't know. So that whole part,
and
like
him being able to interact with his sister and Rickon. And
stuff, because like when he turns on or turns off or whatever, his brain switches. Like he's not seeing himself in a pod, right? He's actually in a physical space.
Okay, so it's not a virtual reality, and they're not getting shrunk.
Maybe they're still getting. I don't know. I think the Outie world is still not what we think it is.
The Outie world is still weird, and that's mostly because of Rickon. Rickon is the most bizarre character.
Okay, so now this gets to the second part of my theory. A lot of the kind of side characters are not actually human. So I do think the four...
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think the four main guys, MDR, they are human.
Okay.
But I think, for example, Milchick is not human. I think Rickon is not human.
So they're robots or aliens?
Casey. So I think that they are either cyborgs or androids, some type of robot humanoid being, robotic humanoid being.
Okay.
Now, the alternative is that they're physical, biological, but they're some kind of clone that's been grown. And I think that's why the goats thing seems to potentially be like related to cloning. There's like a lot of the goats running around.
Okay.
I even thought maybe are the goat bodies being grown and then somehow being like grown into human bodies.
Ew.
So they're like actual like
That's
goat
gross.
DNA. I don't know. Now in some of the
gross.
paintings, you do have these images.
Oh, the guy with the goat head.
Yeah, like goat peoples, right?
Well, he
like
represents. I think he represents one of the 4 temperaments. Frolic. I think he represents Frolic.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
Because there's 4 characters in the painting, and they match the 4 characters in the Waffle Party. And so the goat head,
what do you
I think,
mean
is
the 4 characters in the Waffle Party.
The 4 characters that are dancing for Dylan.
Oh.
In the creepy Waffle Party.
Okay, so there are embodiments of those 4.
Yeah, because like the goat is I'm pretty sure Frolic.
Okay.
The like
jester,
ghost-looking lady is Woe.
Okay.
The jester is probably Malice, and then the one in black is Dread. That's my theory.
Okay. So I think that they might be, and another big part of this, and I think this is what the show's trying to tell us.
Yeah.
So maybe they're misleading us, but Miss Casey, when she says to Mark in their last meeting, she goes like, her life has been for 107 hours, which is, I think, like 4.5 days only. But she says it's within 30-minute increments of these kinds of meetings. Yeah. And then she says, but the 8 hours that I spent watching Helly was the longest I've ever been awake.
Yeah.
So I don't think she is a Innie Outie severed person, because then she would have been awake for 8-hour stretches of work days, right?
Right.
So I think she's some kind of machine that is actually being turned on and off. And, she gets turned on to come up for these sessions and then gets sent back to the testing floor and get turned off, right? And
okay, that's where we disagree.
Okay.
Because I feel like Gemma is very much still alive. And she's been split, maybe not into just 2, but 3, maybe even 4. Which maybe...
Does that mean she has multiple chips in her head?
I don't know. That's a good question. Because I think Gemma exists on the outside world. Miss Casey exists on the severed floor. And then I think she has like a third personality on the testing floor. So she actually does
go in and out of the building?
No, that's just like who Gemma used to be. She's not allowed to leave the building anymore because she's dead.
Okay.
But I don't think she's actually dead. And if she is severed into 4, what if her severed temperaments are like Woe, Frolic, Dread, Malice?
Huh.
Because I would argue Miss Casey is kind of woeful. Is that a word?
So the Miss Casey... Crazy. The Miss Casey that Mark meets is only aware and conscious of that 1/4 of her time.
Maybe.
And that's why she thinks, that could be interesting. I mean, yeah, perhaps there are multiple severed floors where, depending on which floor you show up on, you have a different existing consciousness that you're aware of, and you don't remember what happened on other floors.
It could be.
Interesting. Now, I personally think the real Gemma is dead, and so this is some kind of recreated, what I think happens on the testing floor is that eventually what's going to happen in season 2, I'm guessing, is Mark's going to finally find his way there, and I actually think perhaps this could be the cliffhanger that season 2 ends with, right? Is that he finally gets there, and then the elevator dings and opens, and then like you see his facial reaction, and then it cuts,
Or maybe it shows you a shot,
like a quick shot
of the testing floor, and then it's over.
Yeah, but I imagine there's just rows of like pods or something, like all these bodies creepy. Or something like that, which is why I think.
Ooh, I got the chills.
Yeah, which is why I think Gemma acts so like robotically and awkwardly. Milchick is also really weird.
Yeah,
he has human expressions, but he has these awkward, like, just stares at you and smiles.
Oh my gosh, so dude, that was creepy.
You know, he's just like smiling and he goes, okay, now, and then moves on. Yeah. So he just has
It's like Get Out.
Yeah.
What if it is like Get Out? What if it's like
they're like bodies that have
like he doesn't fit in his own body? I don't know.
And you have just consciousness are just downloaded onto these bodies.
But actually, I don't know, because I feel like Severance probably wouldn't take from an existing IP so directly like that.
They would probably at least try to twist it somehow.
Yeah. So maybe not.
And so the reason why I think then Kier, so I'm imagining, you know, he's created this technology. He's able to have these robots or cyborgs or something kind of doing all this work. The problem is that for him to be fully human, like these machines cannot fully, they could do the analysis and the AI, those computations and all that stuff well, but the emotional parts of being human,
they can't do the sorting.
Yeah, they don't understand that stuff. And that's what they're working on. And so I didn't actually even catch when they're doing the sorting that what the abbreviations were. So you saying like those emotions like frolic and malice.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Well, yeah, like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the 4 boxes are abbreviations.
And so I think that's why Kier needs humans, like actual humans who can understand what emotion feels like and able to, through this constant, you know, machine learning, is kind of teaching the machines like how to compute those emotions or the appreciation of art. Right?
Yeah. Well, the only thing is, don't they say something along the lines of only severed people can do it?
Yeah.
Like you can't. An Outie couldn't do it. Right?
Okay. So
there's something to do with the chip that also enables them to sort it.
So now maybe it's not the fact that Outies can't sort the emotional element of it. Maybe it's just the fact that they need to have a chip implanted so that they could be like patched into Kier's consciousness or something. Because the other part of this is what is the deal with the chips, right?
So it's a link.
Maybe, yeah. It's like you can't tap into the brain.
It's a Wi-Fi router.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because otherwise, why do they all have to have a chip? Why do they have to have this split, right? Like, why can't the Outie just walk in and just do the work and clock out? So the chip matters. It's also revealed that the goal is for every human being on Earth to have a chip.
Yeah.
I think perhaps it could be like that when they're checked in to the severed floor, they're in the building, the chip it essentially enables Kier to use that person's brain as like computing power.
Right.
You know? So for example, like Bitcoin, in order for Bitcoin to be mined, it requires a lot of processing power.
Yes.
And you can lend your machine and your PC to be a Bitcoin mining farm.
Right. And then you get compensated.
Some kind of compensation.
True.
And so, you know, this is like, perhaps that's what his end goal is. He's trying to, maybe he's already have some kind of consciousness as a computer, but he's trying to go to the highest level possible. So the more brains he can access computing power from,
the more godlike he becomes.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's like an unlimited potential. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and maybe this is also connected to this idea of work, because that's kind of the cool thing about Severance, right? Like, yeah, there's a mystery, there's a sci-fi, what's going on, psychological thriller, but the metaphor is very clear. Like, this is talking a lot about work, about our work life, you know, separation, balance, you know, not bringing work home. And perhaps it's kind of communicating, okay, well, when you're at work, in a way, you're giving your brain and your body to your employer and they're compensating you for that. And, you know, so while you're on the clock, like they've kind of...
they're borrowing our time.
Borrowing your brain power. And
that's true.
Your abilities and physical abilities, mental abilities, you know.
It's so interesting because when I first watched this show, I remember thinking, it might be kind of nice to be severed, just because, then when I come home, I don't have to worry about work at all, and it's just easy. But then, like, as the show progresses, you just see, like, oh no, this would be horrible. This would just be terrible, creating, like, two separate identities, and one is trapped at work constantly. And what a nightmare.
That feeling of you're like, oh, it's time to go home, and then boom, next thing you know, you're back at work. Oh my gosh.
And never get to see the sky or the stars or anything.
But I guess you're totally sacrificing half of yourself so that the other half could never have to work.
Yeah.
That's the other way to think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, there is an element here of substance, which I know is outside of what we're talking about here. Yeah. But that also has this idea of you have two beings that share the same kind of DNA or personhood or whatever, and they can't really access each other's experiences, and so
this is also getting into since we're referencing other works, this show does remind me a lot of Dollhouse, and the fact the fact that the actress who plays Miss Casey is one of the leads in Dollhouse, like, it makes the connection even stronger.
And weren't they like androids or something?
No, they're just people that keep getting their personalities erased and then rewritten for the purpose of, doing a job. Or sometimes it's a mission, sometimes it's something less cool.
Okay.
But yeah, they basically get hired out, and then when they return, their brains are erased again.
Okay.
And so they have zero personality and they're dolls. So sometimes I wonder if Miss Casey is sort of in a situation similar to that, but that could just be because I'm comparing it to her other show.
I mean, it might not be.
It's a great show.
Yeah, it might not be accident they cast her. Knowing
that'd be crazy.
Yeah, that she's would be playing a similar type of character.
If another actor from that show appears, oh my gosh, it's over.
Yeah, but I think they're too smart to give it away that much.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think another theory I have is that there's something about this idea of loss, having lost somebody, and the kind of connection you have with them, either the emotional connection or the memories that you have that connect the two of you. So obviously Mark has lost his wife, Gemma, right? Or at least he thinks he has. So he still has strong emotional and memory ties to her.
Yeah.
But also Miss Cobell, we don't know who it is, but when she has her shrine, you see kind of a cutaway of like a hospital bracelet or something like that. So it seems like she's also lost somebody or is grieving the loss of somebody. We don't know who that is, I don't think, right?
Well, it does say the last name, and they share a last name.
Oh, okay.
And I think the date of birth said the year was like 90 or 44.
Oh, okay.
So
maybe it's her mom.
Maybe it's her mom.
Okay, or grandma. No, grandma would be too long ago, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that could be another part of it. So she might have, like, I thought initially she was not she was also a machine, but I thought that made it feel like, okay, maybe she is human and she's part of this whole thing somehow.
Yeah.
And then so with Irving, I think for example, he hasn't lost someone to death, but I think he's lost someone through a relationship in Bert, right? So
is Outie?
So I think that when he sees Bert on the outside, that's not the Outie version of the Bert he saw inside. I think the Bert he saw inside is some kind of robot or whatever, or recreation. But on the outside, he got divorced from Bert.
People.
Yeah. So I think either he lost Bert in terms of like they were married, or but now he's with this other person, and so he's grieving that loss. He's not going to get him back. And so he kind of goes into this program as some way to, and maybe that's part of the deal, is you won't know it, but you'll still be able to see your loved one. I
don't know if there's enough evidence for that, though. I feel like if they wanted that to be the case, they should put like a photograph of them in his apartment. More evidence of Bert other than just his name being written on a paper.
Yeah, but they obviously have a very strong connection, right? Because even on the Innie
their
world,
Innies do, yeah.
So I think that, and again, tying emotion, like the two parts of the brain is another good, interesting idea, like the analytical side versus the whatever left and right. So, I think when it comes to emotion, it like transcends some of these barriers. So that's part of what the Severed program is trying to figure out, how to have that clean cut where emotion and, things like that don't cross over. But I think it's inevitable, and so that's why the emotion from the outside world carries into the inside. And
because he's seeing the black slime kind of thing.
Yeah, because that's another thing.
It's leaking into his
which we
world.
later find out it's paint, right?
Probably.
Yeah, and then even the Outie, when he's painting that, he's kind of getting into this trance-like state, and then turning on music and maybe drinking, and then trying to paint more out of his subconscious and letting his subconscious kind of map itself out.
Well, what's interesting is something I've been thinking about is, how do the dreams work? How does dreaming work? It'd be cool to see more of that in season 2, maybe. Because if they're sharing a consciousness and a body, then when they're in a dream state, why wouldn't some of that information leak into their dreams? Which I guess only the Outies experience sleep, other than when Irving accidentally takes a nap. But I think maybe some of the Innies, subconscious thoughts probably go into their dream state.
Yeah.
At least a little bit. I don't know how it works, but it'd be really interesting if we saw more of that, because I think him seeing the paint as an Innie is a dream.
Okay. I mean, it could have been that when he got created, or something like Miss Casey did, that image is imprinted. Almost like a coming out of the womb, and the first image of the real world, it kind of leaves this kind of crazy imprint in your subconscious.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But I think there's something else going on with Irving that we don't know, because, he has like a military background.
So PTSD, probably.
That's true. So maybe that's what he's trying to kind of forget and erase. But I think perhaps he could be even like a undercover agent for like the FBI or something.
Yeah,
trying to
maybe
go into Lumon and figure out what's going on, because
that would be fun to see.
Yeah, because even like that whole list, like, he has Bert written there, but it seems like it's not just about finding Bert. There's like a lot of names, and it seems like there's a lot of research that's gone in. And he's staying up all night and painting these paintings, like almost like as evidence or something like that. So I don't think he's just some guy who's like a Mark who just wants to forget something and is like going into this program.
It's interesting too, because he's clearly a good artist. So why isn't he in the optics branch?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
painting
where
for
Bert
them?
is. Yeah.
Yeah, like why did they decide to put him in macrodata instead?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And another thing with the painting, I think that's a clue towards the first theory I brought up about the brain being inside the brain, is the shot where Miss Cobell is at Petey's funeral and then is trying to like get the chip out, and then she like goes to drill the brain, and then there's a shot that's like from the perspective inside the brain, and you see like the hole as she like goes in. That kind of framing device is repeated again when Irving is painting, and then he's doing the black, all around, and then it cuts to inside the easel where you see like a black circle, before he then starts to fill it in. And then so even that's like, he's through doing this, he's like accessing inside the brain, his own brain or something,
Oh, wow.
And then also when Mark is going on the wellness walk with Helly, there's like a shot there down the hallway where it has that same kind of like, almost looks like looking through a black hole. Yeah, a circle. Yeah, I think there's some kind of visual language that's being like communicated to us, or hints that are being given.
Everything about the show is just it feels so carefully thought out.
Yeah.
Because when you first watch through it, you're like, this is just random.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go back and you watch it again and you're like, oh my word. Like, this was setting up this and this was setting up this. And it's all like bunch of strings.
Yeah.
Just like kind of moving.
And so I think that's what I'm really looking forward to and hoping for, is that in the end, whenever all of the questions get answered, I guess in the series finale, that we're going to be able to go back and rewatch everything from the beginning, and literally
see how
every
it ties.
scene, every detail is like was already
Magic.
telling us the whole time, And that's kind of maybe how I'm coming up with some of these theories, as I'm hearing some of these things that are being dropped that we don't fully understand.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's a hint that's telling us something literal that we don't understand yet.
Right.
So, for example, you have when they're in the break room and they have to read this apology thing. Like, I think that's a hint. I think that whole speech is actually like Kier's own words, where he's like, forgive me for the harm I've caused. I'm like, only I can atone, stuff like that. And only in me can my stain live on. And so I think perhaps Kier has done something that fundamentally ruined humanity or had the potential to ruin humanity. Like, he did some major harm to the world that he's trying to like undo or make up for, maybe, with this technology. And somehow, like, maybe humanity was about to be extinct, maybe it's already extinct, or they, it's like children of men, like they no longer can have babies or something. Maybe like the water was poisoned.
Someone's been watching Silo.
Yeah, and then through this technology, somehow humanity can continue to live on, even if it's in some kind of artificial way, but it seems it's essentially human.
Interesting.
And that's why he's saying, everyone, my stain will live on in me, and that's why this idea that they're all connected to his consciousness or his brain. I don't know.
Maybe he got caught doing experimentation on people.
Oh.
And it was really bad. And they were like, you have to stop. And so then he apologizes, but then continues to do it in secret.
Yeah. That could be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because clearly he's still going at it.
Yeah.
Like, he's not giving up on whatever his end game is.
Whoever this Egan guy is.
Yeah.
I'll see you at the Revolving.
Yeah. And okay, so
ominous.
Helena, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it seems like she's not a good person. Like, she's in on it. She's some kind of insidious whatever person. But I do think her also having some kind of connection, because her Innie, right, also must have some connection. And maybe it's with her grandfather, right? Because her dad references the grandfather.
The grandfather.
Yeah. So that's
not just your grandfather.
That's true. But yeah, but maybe someone in that lineage, like maybe her grandfather, she has some very strong emotional connection with. Through going into the Severance program, she's somehow trying to like revive that person or something, like Marcus with his wife.
Huh.
I don't know.
Interesting.
And that's why like she specifically needs to be there, because of her emotional and memory connections that she has. As like
I definitely think it's just propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big PR stunt. Get their own to do the Severed program so that the rest of the world does it.
I mean, maybe. It also seems like there has to also be something going on maybe with the government, because there's a senator involved who's pushing this program.
Right.
You have Kier, obviously is rich and all this stuff can be funded by him, but it just seems like him being the only person involved and being in on it, the scale isn't large enough to inhabit like whatever they're doing, And so I think the government has some tie into this, and maybe they're using this program, if America still exists as we know it, like maybe the American government is using this as like a covert thing to create like super spies or something, where if the spies ever get caught, they could just like flip their memories off, and then they never at risk of divulging like secrets.
Or you could train soldiers. Yeah,
or train soldiers.
To be severed.
Yeah. Like maybe they don't have to deal with PTSD, right?
Right.
They can go fight, come back, not have any side effects. Yeah. Okay. Maybe Irving is part of that program.
Ooh, maybe. Going back to the Revolving, or whatever that is, I think my theory is that it's either a regeneration program, like they're able to somehow regenerate or
so like
vitalize
Helena's
a
dad
human
would
being,
die and then come back to life.
Maybe, or like somehow his life is able to kind of reset.
Okay.
And I think that's probably how they were able to save Gemma. They were able to like regenerate her somehow, maybe in a revolving situation. My other theory is that the revolving is actually a transferring of consciousness. So Kier is transferring his consciousness into each CEO.
Oh.
Until
so in
the revolving or the grandfather is actually Kier. And he's going to put his consciousness into Helly's dad, Mr. Egan. Or he's already in Mr. Egan, because honestly, Mr. Egan's kind of creepy.
Yeah. And he kind of looks like
super
the
old.
Kier, like, wax figure.
Yeah, he kind of does. Yeah. So, I don't know. Either there's a regeneration program or there's a transferring program.
I mean, I think that transferring consciousness is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think that works because you have the perpetuity wing by the years all set up already. And Kier is really the main person that we know about. Like, no one else seems to really matter. So then is his revolving that he's referring to? Because he says, you will sit next to me at my revolving.
Yeah.
So then does that mean when he's about to die, he's going to transfer Kier's consciousness to her?
I think so. Yeah. I think she's supposed to be the next one. Because there were female CEOs in the perpetuity wing.
Yeah, that's right. And the chip has to be some part of this, of what enables this to happen, right?
Maybe. So maybe that's why she has to be severed.
Yeah. And like Petey, after, Miss Cobell comes back with the chip, she puts it on the table and then Milchick is like, oh, is that Petey? So there's something about the chip, and maybe it's like an encapsulation of the essence of someone's memory or being, almost like soul.
Some storage.
Yeah. But it's the core memories of that person or something, and that's what gets transferred, and then you can just like move it to different bodies, and then they just kind of turn on and become those people.
Whoa.
And so that's why Kier is being
passed around.
Yeah. Oh, that is interesting. Okay, so another theory I have with Kier is that the board, the voice that when Miss Cobell is getting fired, she's like, says to Natalie, is the board even there? And then for the first time you hear like, yes, right?
You're like, oh, okay, so they can talk.
I think that is Kier's voice.
Ew.
Yeah. So if they're in his head, maybe it's like that speaker is like that static is like the static in the brain or something.
It does seem like the board is always there too.
Yeah. And then so it's like listening in, like almost like if you're underwater or something.
What if the board is the motherboard of the computer?
Oh, okay. Which is Kier, right?
Which is Kier.
Kier's consciousness. Yeah.
Dude.
And so his voice is, maybe it's like a digital voice symbolizing, representing the consciousness. Or maybe they're actually in his head.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about season 2.
Yeah,
I definitely am looking forward to like what kind of reveals happen. The cliffhanger that ended on, she's alive. Oh, is that what he says?
Yeah,
she's alive. Right, like that's so cool.
Imagine waiting 3 years.
That's so. Oh my god! I'm so glad I didn't watch it 3 years ago. I would have already like forgotten everything and be like, okay, now I have to rewatch everything.
Yeah, that's why I rewatched it, but.
Okay.
It was even better on the second watch.
Nice.
But anyway.
Wow.
Well, we look forward to getting to review season 2.
Yeah.
So be looking for that. 2.
Yeah.
Whenever that episode drops. But then
also let us know what you think about some of these theories, and if you guys have any cool theories too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Comment it down below. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Letterboxd if you want to see our reviews for other movies.
And next week, we'll be back with a movie review.
Yep.
Hopefully one of the Oscar ones. We're getting really close to the Oscars. And
hopefully a complete unknown.
Jamie.
My bad.
Well, yeah, join us next week as we continue our quest for the 5th star.